welcome to today's discussion, which is about yoga, which is one of my favorite topics, and I have lots. So back in 2009, I trained as a yoga teacher and I absolutely loved it. Yoga has helped ground me, and it's helped me to manage my anxiety. And at the time of my training, my then 18-month-old son ended up in Starship, having swallowed a padlock. Another story for another time. And he was really, really sick. And it was yoga that helped keep me together in what was actually probably the most stressful time of my life. Yoga has helped me with bloating. It's helped me with my joint pain and stiffness, particularly my morning stiffness, which as I've got older, I've experienced more. It's helped me with period cramps, and the science and the research backs up what I know to be true, that yoga is crucial for good health, both physical and mental. So I wanted to talk a little bit about yoga, the different types of yoga, and what the research says about yoga. And I'm really touching the surface. So it's been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. The word yoga means to yoke or bind, which can be translated as a bringing together or a connection. So the original purpose of yoga was really to give the mind something to focus on in order to be able to meditate. And when I was taught yoga, we were taught that actually you'd focus on one small part of the physical aspect of yoga before you were even allowed to move into breathing and then meditation. It was kind of a sequence. And now we basically do all of it in one go. And really, yoga is a moving meditation in some ways. It involves static poses, what we call asanas. And also it can involve moving sequences. It involves breathing techniques and meditation. One of my favorite forms of yoga is known as yoga nidra, which is also known as sleep yoga. And that's a wonderful form of relaxation and guided meditation. And whilst it originated in India, it's hugely popular all around the world. And there are so many forms. If you say you don't like yoga, there are so many forms of yoga. I bet you would find a form that you really like. And I've found that the type of yoga I like now is really different from the type of yoga I liked in my 20s. I actually grew up, I remember my mum doing yoga in my kitchen when I was a kid and thinking, what's she doing? And then looking at the yoga books and practicing the postures, and I thought it was fantastic. And that's just carried on. It's always been a part of my life. So I just want to share some of the different types of yoga, and these are the more kind of standard traditional types. So there is a type of yoga called Kundalini or Satyananda. They're really similar. And this type of yoga uses a mix of your usual yoga postures, but tends to include things like chanting and singing, meditation, something called Kriya. And the Kriya is a specific series of postures or poses paired along with breath work and maybe some chanting or mantras. Most of the classes start with a mantra or an affirmation and will include breathing exercises. The classes usually start off gently and then move into more challenging postures. And pretty much finish with breathing exercises and then a final relaxation and or meditation. Most classes won't have music, and they tend to be a lot more spiritually based. And this was a kind of yoga that I trained in. So I've trained in both Kundalini and Satyananda yoga. The next type of yoga is Vinyasa yoga, which is sometimes called flow yoga. And this type of yoga is about flowing sequences with a bit more of a rhythm, using the breath in sync with the movements. And it's a really lovely, gentle yoga that helps with stress, really good for beginners or those who can't sit and still, a bit of a challenge. Then we have Hatha yoga, which is kind of more of a general yoga. It gets its name from the Sanskrit, which means sun and moon, because it's really all about balance. And it's the most common form of yoga. Again, great for beginners, great for those who maybe are looking for a more gentle type of yoga. And it can be a real mix of both the static postures or asanas and moving poses, usually ends with a relaxation. Then we get into some more structured type of yoga. So you've got Ashtanga yoga, which is very structured. It consists of a series of specific postures that need to be done in order. There's about 6 series in total, and the idea is you master one series before you move on to the next one. Again, this form of yoga doesn't usually have music, and it's really good for people who like structure and want to kind of see the progress as they move through. Then we've got yin yoga, which is a slower style of yoga. Sometimes it's called restorative yoga, and I love this form of yoga. Those of you that are A-type personalities, on the go, really, really, really busy, this is the type of yoga that you should do, which is not easy because it's really hard sitting still for that length of time. I remember teaching yoga a long time ago, and it was always the busy, stressed people that would do the first part of the yoga, and then the minute we came to the relaxation and the meditation, all of a sudden they would be really busy and would need to go because they didn't want to sit still. But actually, the more stressed and busy we are, the more we need this. So yin yoga is fantastic if you know you just need to calm your mind and calm your body. Now you can hold the poses for anywhere between 1 minute, 5 minutes, or even longer. You generally use props, things like pillows and bolsters and blankets and blocks in order to support the body. So it's really good. You're not pushing your body too much, and you're using the props in order to support the body while you're in those postures. So it's really good if you're looking for flexibility, if you're looking for stretching, if you need to manage the chronic stress or that the mind chatter, the monkey brain, as they sometimes call it. And it's really good for those with injuries because it's a lot slower paced and really supportive of the joint. So if you have sore knees or shoulders or arms, then it can be really beneficial for that. Then we have Iyengar yoga. So Iyengar yoga was the yoga that I started with as a young adult. And this is focusing much more on static poses. It's all about alignment, uses props again. So things like chairs and straps and walls and bolsters and blocks and benches. And again, really good for those who like detailed instruction. And the poses are usually held for a while, similar to yin yoga. And then we have Bikram yoga, which is hot yoga, really similar to Ashtanga yoga, and it consists of a series of postures that need to be performed in a specific order. Each class can be anywhere, well, it's usually around 90 minutes. And there's, I think it's about 26 postures that you have to go through in those 90 minutes. The main difference is that the room has got to be set at a specific temperature, anywhere between 33 and 40 degrees Celsius. And the heat is thought to help improve flexibility and circulation and help with detoxification through sweating. So it's a much more physical form of yoga. They depends on the classes, but they don't always do a meditation or relaxation at the end. It tends to be much more about the physical. Now, this is just that these are the kind of the main classic types of yoga. There are so many forms of yoga. There's aerial yoga, which I've tried, which is really good fun. There's acrobatic yoga. I've done yoga on water boards, on a swimming pool. There's yoga with animals. There is a HIIT type yoga, the high intensity interval training yoga. Crikey, there's just, you name it, there's a form of yoga. There's also yoga that mixes with Pilates, yoga lattes, which is also really cool. So I've experienced most forms of yoga. And as I said, I've trained in Satyananda, I've trained in Kundalini, I've trained in Hatha, and I eventually ended up specializing in pregnancy, natal yoga, and kids yoga. And yes, that's a type of thing. That's a type of yoga too. Kids yoga is fantastic. I absolutely loved it. So my point to this is that there are so many forms of yoga that it's as much about finding the type of yoga that resonates with you at your time of life now, as well as the teacher, because dependent on the teacher you have can actually depend on whether you resonate with the yoga. Now, you might find that what resonates with you might change, as I said, your age, your interest, your personality, and also your time of month. So I'm going to talk about this in a minute. So I want to just next talk about what the science says about yoga. So some really cool research, and I'm really touching the tip of the iceberg. So we know that yoga can be really beneficial for flexibility and strength. It's a really important part of health. So as we age, our flexibility can diminish. There was a meta-analysis in 2019, which is a big study looking at all of the different studies and then kind of collating them and coming up with a conclusion based on all these studies. And it showed that yoga really did improve flexibility and prevented its decline in older adults. It also improved quality of life as we age. There are multiple studies that show that yoga can increase muscle strength, which is really important across all ages and population groups. And there's some really good studies to show it was really important for women recovering from breast cancer, because you can lose muscle when you have diseases like cancer, and as we age, we lose muscle. So really important for building that muscle and that muscle strength. So really important for women as we age. Again, stress management, mood, mental health, yoga's got heaps of research behind that. It's well known for helping deal with the emotional roller coasters of life. There was a study done on the impact of yoga on depression, anxiety, and stress, and it showed that just 12 sessions of hatha yoga significantly decreased the symptoms. There was another trial using Iyengar yoga that again showed that the symptoms of major depressive disorder again declined after 12 weeks of doing that form of yoga. There was a literature review in 2017 that concluded that yoga interventions were really effective in reducing depression. And yoga nidra, that's sleep yoga, where you lie on your back and you are using breathing techniques, you're using your senses, you're using guided meditation, really beneficial for anxiety. Cardiovascular health is another area where yoga has been shown to be helpful. There was a study in 2019 that concluded breathing techniques taught as part of a yoga, which in yoga is called pranayama, was hugely beneficial at supporting a healthy heart rate, the pressure in your blood vessels and arterial pressure, and also the contraction of the heart and breathing rate. Lots of studies around cardiovascular health, which is really great. The other area that I want to talk about is hormones and menopause. Now, there's not so many studies specifically to show that yoga helps with menopause. There was one small pilot study that showed yoga helped reduce all symptoms except hot flushes, although there was another 8-week study that showed that yoga, particularly something called the Salute to the Sun sequence, alongside breathing and meditation, did reduce hot flushes. And that was in comparison with just exercise. So there's a real mix of studies. They're all quite small because there generally aren't that many, not many research studies done on menopausal women, but it's promising, and it may, particularly if it helps with the anxiety and the depression and the stress, then that in itself can maybe help with menopause symptoms. Maybe not necessarily hot flushes, although, as I said, there was this one small study that showed the breathing and the meditation and the yoga did help with hot flushes. Breathing definitely does help with hot flushes. There are studies to show that just breathing in itself can actually help with that. There are some studies that show that a gentle form of yoga or meditation can help with sleep by increasing melatonin, our sleep hormone. And so that can be really beneficial for insomnia or any sleep problems. It was found to be more beneficial in those that didn't have any health conditions at all, or if they weren't experiencing sleep problems because of menopause, they actually found the bigger benefit. Now, because stress can negatively impact digestion by reducing vagal nerve activity, which I know I talked about previously, it's been shown that yoga stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, our brake system in our car, and therefore can stimulate the vagus nerve. So it's been long suggested that yoga can help with IBS symptoms. Even in Ayurvedic medicine, which is your ancient Indian medicine, there was a condition called grahani, which was the Indian equivalent of IBS. And it was treated specifically with yoga, breathwork, and meditation. And there was a 2006 study on teenagers who were diagnosed with IBS. And just after 4 weeks of daily at-home hatha yoga, their IBS symptoms reduced significantly. There are other studies that have shown benefit. There's probably more better quality, larger studies that need to be done before yoga would be recommended as a standardized treatment. But we already know that hypnotherapy can help with IBS. There's heaps of studies on that. And we know that the emotions play a role in IBS. So by yoga helping with stress and anxiety, that in itself can help with IBS too. There was another really good study that showed that yoga reduces inflammation in the body, which is really important because inflammation drives many chronic health conditions, including arthritis and inflammatory bowel disease, and diabetes, heart disease, cancer. And the researchers basically looked at chemicals in our blood. We call them inflammatory markers, such as interleukin-6, C-reactive protein, and tumor necrosis factor. And these show up when there is a lot of inflammation in the body. And they took samples before yoga intervention and after, and they found that didn't actually matter what type of yoga, didn't matter how often people did the yoga, or the duration of the sessions. They could have been 20 minutes, it could have been half an hour, didn't actually make any difference. Just the practice of some form of yoga actually made a difference to these inflammatory markers and reduced them in the blood. So even if you manage 15 minutes of yoga now and again, it will make a difference. So that's really important to know. Now I want to talk about how to use yoga to match your cycle. Now, whilst there's pretty much a void of research on women and how exercise impacts us during our menstrual cycle, there's been quite a lot of research on athletes and how their menstrual cycle affects their performance. And what is clear from that research is that women generally have more energy and more strength in the first half of your menstrual cycle and less in the second half. So in the first half, this is you building up to ovulation and around ovulation, and the second half of your cycle is that kind of PMS type period, and then moving into your actual bleed. So you've got more energy and strength in the first half and less in the second half. And in fact, exercise-induced injuries were actually more common in the second half. So that means that if you're interested in doing yoga, that in the first half of your cycle, the Bikram yoga, the hot yoga, the Ashtanga yoga, the Iyengar yoga, the HIIT type yoga would be much more beneficial. And then as you move into your second phase, focusing much more on the gentle flowing forms of yoga. And then the yin restorative yoga would be perfect during menstruation. So it's not like you necessarily have to kind of block everything off, but just think about the types of yoga that you love and focusing on those that need energy, that need strength in the first half. And then as you move into the second half of your cycle, especially around your period, doing really gentle restorative yoga is much more beneficial. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've got something from that. Have a fantastic day. Let me know what your feedback is, if you've got any questions, and I'll see you next time.